Hello, Professor Sana Loue. Welcome to this new session of Plenary Speakers, Plenary Session actually, dedicated to the title Annihilation of Difference, Trauma and Witnessing. Sana, do you hear us? We are seeing your share screen, but we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfectly. Thank you. Before you start your presentation, please allow me to give our audience a short introduction of who you are. Thank you. And please allow me to share my... Oh, I cannot do that. Okay, I will just do it freely. Sana Loue is professor PhD within the Department of Bioethics at the Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine in Cleveland, Ohio. She holds degrees in law, epidemiology, medical anthropology, social work, secondary education, public health, and theology. She has been privileged to conduct research in Laos, Romania, Russia, Tajikistan, and Uganda, and to engage with audiences on issues including but not limited to the conduct of research, research ethics, professional development, and or diversity in Canada, Chile, Colombia, Kazakhstan, Mexico, Romania, Russia, Spain, Switzerland, Tajikistan, and Vietnam. Her current research addresses the interplay between religion, society, and bioethics, the integration of cultural humility into clinical care and research settings, and past and current formulation of eugenics. Dr. Loue has authored and edited more than 30 books and more than 100 peer-reviewed journal articles. We welcome you, Sana, and we invite you to give your plenary speech on the annihilation on difference, trauma, and witnessing. Thank you for being here with us.
Mulțumesc. Doresc să mulțumesc organizatorilor conferinței pentru invitația de a prezenta la această conferință. Este o onoare pentru mine. Sper că voi putea călători din nou la Iași în tren de nu foarte îndepărtat. Îmi cer scuze că restul celor pe care le voi spune sunt în limba engleză și îmi cer scuze pentru greșelile mele de exprimare în limba romană. Bună ziua!
You are awesome!
No, but thank you. So I'm going to go through some of the slides very quickly just to make sure that we're all on the same page. But I would really enjoy the opportunity to engage with you in conversation and understand your thoughts, and so we could learn from each other and gather different perspectives. So as Anna very kindly introduced this session, I'll be talking about the annihilation of difference. And if I can get these slides to work here. And in general, I'll be talking about genocide. And at one time, at the close of World War II, the world thought that this would be the end of such occurrences. And we see that obviously it is not. These are some quotes. They're on the plenary, so I won't repeat them here. But I think one of the most important is that by Judith Herman, who said the conflict between the will to deny horrible events and the will to proclaim them aloud is the central dialectic of psychological trauma. And what we see both. These are opposing ends, right? We want to proclaim them aloud so that we can address them, and yet they are so awful that we wish to deny their occurrence. Genocide means any of the following acts committed with the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group, including the killing of members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm, deliberately inflicting conditions of life that are calculated to bring about its destruction, imposing measures to prevent births, and forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. I think what is important here is if we look at the definition that's used by the United Nations, it excludes the intention of destroying a group based on their political beliefs. And yet we would still say that this is the intentional destruction of a group. So the questions really are, why does one group of people set out to eradicate another group? What is the aftermath, and who is a witness, and how should witnesses respond? So I will very briefly go through the first 2 points since they are on the plenary video, and really focus our discussion on the last point. In general, we see that genocide occurs when societies reify differences, when they say that one group is a certain way and that is not true of another group. There's a desire for homogeneity, a desire for what is conceived of societally as progress. And whatever is not conceived of as progress is somehow seen as less than, as degenerate. So we see these oppositions, these oppositional qualities that we are, this is us and that group is them. We are good, they are evil. We belong to our group, they are alien, they do not belong. We are pure, they are somehow impure. We represent progress, they represent the degeneration of society. And we certainly see this in past genocidal occurrences. What we do know is that as a result of genocide, there is intergenerational trauma. And so what this means is that not only the people who directly experienced the genocide and survived it, or the descendants of people who did not experience it, but even beyond that, multiple generations. And this affects their worldview, it affects their perceptions of themselves, it affects their relationships within society. For people who actually are impacted, it can affect memory, it can increase the risk of depression, there can be survivor syndrome, even among people who did not directly experience the genocide. And what we know is that there is essentially a rupture of everything, not only for the individual, but for society and the culture of that group as well. The transmission through generations can occur through silence, through under disclosure by the people who lived through the genocide, by continuing historical trauma, and actually through biological dysregulation and changes to our biological systems that are then passed on to offspring. I want to go through this and talk about really witnessing. So who are witnesses? We know that states are witness, different governments, and this happens in the context of international relations. After genocide occurs through truth commissions and international tribunals, and individual governments are witnesses, local governments, country governments, and larger groups of governments. And what has been called the civil society of nonconformity, people who refuse to conform to what the societal expectations are to further the genocidal purpose. And clearly healthcare providers are witnesses on the ground and after the genocide. So the United Nations adopted a document that says that each individual state, meaning each country, has the responsibility to protect its populations from genocide, war crimes, ethnic cleansing, and crimes against humanity. And this entails the prevention of such crimes. The international community should, as appropriate, encourage and help states to exercise this responsibility. And in addition, the UN adopted 3 pillars that says that every state has the responsibility to protect its populations from genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and ethnic cleansing. So when we talk about genocide, we're talking about really crimes against a group. When we're talking about crimes against humanity, these are the kinds of things we see carried out against individuals, where a soldier in the context of war may rape a civilian. The wider international community has the responsibility to encourage and assist individual states in meeting that responsibility. And if a state is failing to protect its populations, the international community must be prepared to take appropriate collective action. When we look at the individual, there are different ways of offering resistance. So there is sheltering, hiding somebody from the persecutors. There's rescuing people, right? Someone removes them completely from the situation, helps them to escape to a place of safety. There are what are called helpful bystanders. So these may be people who don't actually actively rescue someone or shelter someone, but what they do is they will warn someone, that the soldiers are coming, you need to leave. And then there's been what has been called the civil society of nonconformity. So if we look, for instance, at the Nazi regime when it existed, even though the Nazis passed laws that said you must report infants who were born with any kind of deficiency, or you must euthanize someone with a mental illness, or you must declare someone who is Jewish. There were people who said these laws are not valid, even though they were passed, and I am going to disobey them. So I would like to stop here and really, I'm going to stop sharing, and I would really love to have an open discussion about what you think individuals should be responsible for. I know I have not been in this situation. I don't know how I would respond. When we look at people who are rescuers, people who shelter, people who are nonconformists, many of them act out of compassion, many act out of empathy, many act out of altruism, some based on their religious beliefs. But what do we think should be people's responsibilities? And given that we are currently in a situation with Ukraine and Russia, where many of us on multiple levels are having to address these issues, I think it's worth an open discussion.
Thank you, Sanas. Thank you so much for your so accurate presentation. It was a beautiful one. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Even from the beginning, when you sent us your title and your abstract, do you remember that I asked you if you know about the Gabor's Mate works? Mm-hmm. The reason I asked you that is that during listening his speeches and reading his books, I noticed that the common point of the person that he interacted with that lived a powerful trauma was that they were unable to talk about what they felt, and they simply kept their feelings within, and the trauma evolved more and more, and they actually destroyed their own life, personalities, based on the fact that they weren't listened. If at that certain point they would have been listened, then their trauma would be more easier for them to overpass, to pass over it. And that was a crucial point for me to understand what exactly trauma is. It's actually our feelings which are not expressed, not elaborated, let's say. Mm-hmm. And thank you for your thoughts again, and for your presentation.
Yeah, I would agree with you, and with that observation. And what we know from the study of neurobiology, there's a researcher, Bessel van der Kolk, who has done extensive work on trauma. And what he has found is that when, as you say, somebody has to remain silent and they keep the trauma within them and they can't process it, they're not heard, that it actually, he says the trauma lives within the body. And even when people don't remember all of the details of their trauma, their body does remember. And so it becomes important to help people find a way to release that trauma and to listen to them, as you suggest, because it relieves not only the psychological trauma, but the physical effects of that trauma that are living within their body. So maybe they have back problems or horrendous headaches, or they can't sleep, or even worse, right? They could have hallucinations, they could have flashbacks. And that, as you suggest, it becomes important to somehow be able to release that trauma in order to heal not only emotionally and psychologically, but physically as well.
Yes, because the effects goes into the physical body, and what I learned about is that this pain, this emotional, physical, psychological pain is transgenerational.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm here, I have 30 years old, and I'm feeling my body actually lives something that my grandmother or my mother years ago felt.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's the same. I think it's kind of a circle that happens also in the Jewish situation.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it happens even, I think of an example from Romania during the Ceausescu era, when people could not use birth control, when they couldn't have abortion, and people put their children in the orphanages. And I had done a study in the early 90s where I asked healthcare workers why they thought people put their children in the orphanages. And I asked women who had put their children in the orphanages what happened. And the opinions were very different. So many of the healthcare workers would say, oh, they didn't care about their children, or their husband was drunk, or, they were irresponsible. But when I talked with the women, it was a very different story. They said, I couldn't take care of the child. The state said that they would take care of them. I thought I would be able to go back for them. I was never able to go back for them. And they felt very guilty. And they were still feeling the trauma from that. And no one had ever asked them about it. So I think there are historical events that even we don't conceive of as traumatic, but they may affect an entire generation.
Thank you, Sana. We have another commentary and a question from the audience. And it sounds like that. People tend not to feel responsible or interested for those people and those events that are far from them in place or time, or to which they feel they didn't contribute.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, what do you think is connection between one's own interest and responsibility?
So I think that's an excellent question, because I think that's absolutely true, that people tend to think that something that is not affecting them directly, that's in a different place, in a different time period, is of no importance to them. I think part of it, for some people who do feel a connection, it comes from their religious beliefs. That we have a responsibility to everybody. For people who are not particularly tied to a religion, I think it comes from how one sees one's own identity, whether one is rooted only to a particular group, or whether one is a citizen of the world and has a larger responsibility. I think we all make decisions in very large and very small ways about how to walk through life, how to interact with people, and that is one of the choices. And it's impossible, given that there are so many hours in a day and so many days in anyone's life, right, for everyone to do everything for everyone and everything. So we all make choices. And it becomes important to consider, again, what our priorities are, what our resources are in making those choices, and what is critically needed at the present time, right? There's nothing I can do about a genocide, the genocide of Armenians that happened many decades ago. But if there's a genocide happening now, how do I choose to respond to that? There's a comment in the chat. You were asking about the responsibility people have to help those in need, as is the current situation with Ukrainian refugees. Do you think maybe some people avoid taking action in order to protect themselves emotionally, or maybe just block the suffering caused by learning about others' traumatic experiences? I think that's an excellent question. I think people do avoid taking action for any number of reasons. So it may be to protect themselves emotionally. It may be because they fear the consequences to themselves or their family members, right? Someone may be from Russia and they're outside of Russia, but they still have family members there, and they may fear saying anything because of the potential consequences to their family members. And again, I think we all make these choices. My belief is that there are no guarantees in life. So I could choose to be silent. That doesn't guarantee that my family members will not suffer. I can choose to speak. That also doesn't guarantee whether my family members will suffer or not suffer. And they also have the ability to make independent choices. So I think it becomes important to remember that there are no guarantees. There's nothing certain. And I think in general, we as the people everywhere, right, we prefer certainty. It makes life easier, right? The sun will come up tomorrow, it will set in the evening. But there's no certainty that we will get up when the sun shines, right? I mean, we don't know that. We live our lives with these assumptions, and sometimes we project the assumptions forward as if they're certainties, but they're really not. I don't know if that answered the question at all. I would love to hear other people's thoughts as well.
Thank you. Antonio?
I'm sorry, there's another question in the chat.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Yes. How about empowerment and responsibility? If people feel powerless, can they feel responsible? I think how do I put this? I think people have agency even when others suggest that they are powerless. So, for instance, someone can tell me that I have to stay where I am. I can't leave. I still have agency. I still have the ability to decide to try to avoid, to find a way around that prescription. I have to be prepared for whatever consequences there are, but I still have agency to make a choice. And in my mind, if I have agency, I have responsibility. If for no other reason, I have responsibility to consciously make a choice, not to ignore and deny and have the choice made passively, because no choice is still a choice. It's just that we avoid responsibility for the choice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a short comment.
Please.
I have a short comment on this problem of responsibility and of trauma. In Europe, the problem of migrants and this migration for human rights, for persons that are persecuted in their own country or they are in the war, was also available a few years ago from refugees from Syria and so on. But when we had refugees, war refugees from Ukraine that are on Romanian border, suddenly this was a very different situation. Suddenly we say, oh, they are ours. Mm-hmm. But they are also human in Syria, not only in Ukraine. Well, we say, oh, they are Syrians, they are migrants. Let's have quota of refugees. Let's negotiate in the UE country how many refugees to take in Romania, how many refugees to go in Germany, in Hungary, and so on. But when they come from Ukraine, that are near us, well, let's welcome them. Let's make them comfortable. All major cities in Romania have refugee now. All train stations have a place for refugees, just because they are close to us. Well, when they come in large numbers, very large numbers from Syria, for example, well, we say, oh, they go home. They must go home. From Ukraine, no. We have a very different attitude because they are nearby. And we say, well, we can be there because Russia can attack us in the near future. So just fear make us solidar. So that was my comment on this topic.
No, I think that's an important observation, and it goes to this idea, right, of us versus them. And the more similar we perceive people to us, the more likely we are to say, okay, they belong, right? We're willing to accept them. So I appreciate your comment because I think it's an excellent example.
Yes,
Thank you. If there are any other commentaries or questions to be asked, Sana here is for you for give insights and answers.
Hearing none, thank you all so much. It was wonderful to see you, even if it's on Zoom. And I hope that I get to see you in person soon, that COVID will.
Thank you, Sana. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for your topic. Thank you for sharing with us your thoughts and your ideas. And thank you to all that all the persons that participated.
Thank you very much, Sana, and all participants for today's session.
Thank you. Have a good evening.